check out this great testimony. It's all because of Jesus.
I was born and raised in Albemarle, North Carolina. I came from not a Christian home. I've got the sweetest mom in the world, the most empathetic, sweetest person in the world. Give the shirt off her back, and I'm just a great person. My father was very abusive to my mom. I grew up in a house terrified of my dad. Never knew when he was going to snap, and just, I went to bed. I remember laying in my bed many nights listening to my dad just beat my mom, hurt my mom. Me and my sister have seen him just do things to her that no child should witness. Pick her up and choke her until she passed out, throw her on the floor. Just some horrible things. So eventually, she was scared of him. We were all scared of the man. And eventually she was able to divorce him. And after he broke a restraining order, came in the house, and some things went down. But anyway, she was able to divorce him. Well, I was probably 15, 16 at the time, and at 17 years old, Caleb, I got very rebellious. I can say I was a popular guy in high school. I played soccer for 4 years. I went to Governor's Magnet School for 2 years, my junior and senior year for theater. Dated who I thought was the prettiest girl in the county at the time. But I was very rebellious. I ran around with a group of guys, and we started smoking marijuana, drinking every night from 17 to 19 years old. Doing cocaine came in the picture. We did cocaine, just doing a lot of things I knew I shouldn't have been doing. If I can back up, I forgot to tell you, we moved up here in my 5th grade year, and my dad was working at the nuclear plant in Surrey. So they put us in Peninsula Christian School. And that was the first time I was ever introduced to Jesus. And I remember my teacher, Mr. Davis, I still remember Mr. Davis, asking, who in the class, he had like an altar call. And I think I was the first one at the front of the room that time, and asked Jesus in my heart. So I accepted Christ. And I was in the 5th grade at the time. I was young, but I had an awesome relationship. I still remember the relationship that I had with Christ. Moved back to Carolina, came back up here in my 9th grade year, and went to Smithfield High School. And that's where all this started. I was running around with a group of guys, like I said, smoking, drinking, doing drugs, doing things in the town we shouldn't have been doing. The cops just would love to have busted us. They knew my name and trying to get us. But the whole time I was doing these things, I knew it was wrong. I knew God was speaking to me. I knew that smoking the marijuana, drinking, the other drugs, I knew that it wasn't where God wanted me. So I'd even considered moving back to North Carolina with my father, whom I didn't care for at the time, but I thought this would be a good escape, a good way to get away from what I was doing. And but I didn't. I kept doing what I was doing. Graduated high school, and April 22nd, 1989, I had a buddy of mine. He came down, lived in Richmond. He moved to Richmond. He came back down to Smithfield. And we'd been out that night and with all the boys, and he was heading back to Richmond that night, and I was going with him to spend the night. We were going to a concert the next day. Well, it was late at night. Mom was like, "I don't want you leaving this late at night," but I was 19 years old. I knew everything. Couldn't tell me anything. I walked to the door and left with my buddy. He had a new 88 Camaro, and I asked him, I said, "Mike, why don't you let me drive?" Because I knew I wasn't going to fall asleep behind the wheel. I'm not that kind of guy. And, he said, "No, my dad don't want me to let anybody drive the car." I said, "Sure, no problem." So he took off driving. Well, I fell asleep in the passenger seat. He fell asleep in Hopewell, Virginia. Put us into a metal telephone pole. I don't remember a thing. Nothing. Don't remember absolutely nothing. I was taken to John Randolph Hospital and John Randolph in Hopewell, and then flown by helicopter from John Randolph to MCV, where I lay in a coma for 9 days and was in a hospital for 2.5 months. Wow. Again, don't remember a thing. Just remember getting in the car and then waking up in the hospital a couple weeks later. I had major head trauma, which you can see the scars on my forehead, and my right side of my face was crushed. They said I just got flung into the dashboard, and they didn't expect me to live. Doctors told my mom, they said, "We're going to do the best we can. We don't know." Like I said, I lay in a coma for 9 days. They weren't sure how I was going to come out of the coma, what was going to be going on, but God had a plan, and he brought me through it. And completely turned my life around. I was sitting in a hospital, started going down to the chapel on Sunday mornings. I was in a wheelchair. I had to learn how to walk all over again. I had to go through all kind of therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. I'd get in my wheelchair and I'd roll down to Sunday morning chapel at MCV and listen to the preacher down there. And I remember sitting in my hospital room and I heard that still soft voice, just as sweet as can be. I can still hear it today saying, "Eric, I gave you a second chance. What are you going to do with it?" And I said, "That's it, God. It was the worst thing that could have happened to me, but the best thing that could have happened to me. Completely turned my life around. I wouldn't trade a thing. Wouldn't change a thing. It's the way my doctor came in, Dr. Zassler. I remember him examining me one time. He came in and he looked at me straight in the face. He said, "You know you shouldn't be here, right?" I said, "Yes, sir. That's what I've been told." And again, I know good and well it was God's hand of grace and mercy that kept me alive and spared my life and got me through that accident and turned my life around. And I got saved and I came back. Had a preacher coming up from Smithfield. Never been to his church, from the Nazarene church, but he had a lady that went to his church that worked with my mom. So they were praying for me because my mom was up at Richmond almost every day, spending the night and coming back and forth, driving back and forth. And this church prayed for me. And the preacher, who didn't know me, would come up there and sit with me while I was in a coma and hold my hand. And he told me later he was saying Jesus loves me to me and prayed over me and stuff. And he and I became best friends after I got saved and started going to the church. He baptized me. I was the very first person he ever baptized. Years later, I became a lay pastor and was ministering there. Like I said, I taught Sunday school there. And he left the church and things kind of dwindled down. A lot of people ended up leaving church and ended up closing the church. And I went to Bacon's Castle and been a part of Bacon's Castle for 18 years now. I'll share this quick story with you. I became a Nazarene youth leader several months after I got out of the hospital and joined the Nazarene church. I became the youth leader there. And I had been youth leader, and I had a buddy of mine who I went to high school with who started coming to the church, and I invited him. He started coming in and sitting on my youth group. And he sat in there for about 2 or 3 weeks, and one day I was taking him home, and Bruce said, "Eric," he said, "I want to be like you and the rest of your church." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, I don't feel like I feel like I'm missing something." And Bruce was pretty much raised in a Baptist church, but had never accepted Christ. And I asked him, I said, "Bruce, have you ever accepted Christ into your life?" He said, "I'm not sure." Which tells me, if you're not sure, you haven't. So I put him to his driveway at his house, and my first time doing it, and I asked him, I said, "You want to accept Christ?" He said, "Yeah." So we prayed the sinner's prayer together. And he accepted Christ, and I remember he went inside, and I went home, and I was so excited. I led my first person to Christ and prayed him through, and I got home, and I was sharing my story with my mom, and she said, "You know what the day is, Eric?" And I said, "What?" She said, "It's April 22nd.
Wow.
It had been exactly 1 year from the day of my accident that I led Bruce to Christ. Also, a couple of years ago, I was an Awana leader at Bacon's Castle, and I was teaching a 5th grade class. My son was in there, and I had probably about 8 to 10 boys in there. I shared my testimony with them and asked them who would want to accept Christ. There was 5 or 6 raised their hand, including my son, and accepted Christ that night.
That's awesome.
So that was beautiful. So just like I said, give God all the glory. Give God all the glory. So it's his testimony, not mine. So
Man, praise God. What another great testimony. My name is Caleb Hurley. This is the Jesus Shift podcast. We've got new testimonies every single week. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment something that God has done in your life. God bless and have a great rest of your day.